Hi everybody, it's Tracy from Yoga Within. Today I'm going to do a mini tutorial on downward facing dog. So we do downward facing dog a lot in yoga. You probably do it in most of your yoga classes. Sometimes I hear from students that their wrists get sore or their shoulders get sore. So I want to try to give you a few different options of how to get into downward facing dog, and hopefully with some adjustments you might feel some relief through some of that. Okay, so we're going to actually start down on our mats, just kneeling. And I want you to just consider a couple of things. Just the placement of your hands and feet on your mat make a huge difference. So instead of thinking about the mat as barriers in terms of the edges of the mat, I want you to think about the idea that maybe you could widen your hands or widen your legs to a different position to help you in that pose, depending on what your body is like and what you're feeling right now. So think about where your hands are. So if you come up to hands and knees, we can start here. If your hands are in really close, how does that feel on your shoulders? How does that feel down the arms? If you widen the hands a little bit more, does it feel different? Does it feel better? Does it feel worse? And if you widen it a lot more, does that feel different? Does that feel better? So you might want to just play with how wide your hands are. The other thing to think about is the placement of the fingers on the mat. So often we have thought about the middle finger as the middle placement for your hands. But the thing is, when you do that, you actually slightly turn in your wrist, and some people do get pain in that area. If we think about the index finger as the middle, then you can turn the hands slightly out so that the middle finger's pointing forward, and then your wrist is quite straight. So let's try that on the mat. So placing it in the position you think is good for you, just turn the hands out slightly, having the index finger pointing forward. Now spread those fingers. Good. So you might play with where you are. I've actually come to the point where often in downward dog, my baby fingers are hanging off the mat, so I'm a little bit wider, but you might want them in a little bit closer. Good, so from this position, let's tuck our toes and let's come up to downward facing dog. Remembering that the index finger is forward, you're spreading the fingers. Now you want to take the weight back. You probably hear that all the time. You can bend the knees as much as you need to here. Think about the spine being really long, not worrying about the length through the legs. So you're bending your knees, take the tailbone back, and just let the head hang between your arms. Breathing here. Good. Lifting the belly up towards the spine a little bit, just creating a little more action through the torso. Breathing. Good. Now, come on back down to kneeling. And you can think about how that felt in the hands and the arms. Now I want you to think about your feet. So maybe you widen the feet a little bit. Maybe you bring them closer together. So let's try a different position. So bringing those hands again in front, index finger pointing forward, opening up the fingers, tucking the toes. Now let's lift up the tailbone and send the weight back. Good, so maybe you try widening the feet a bit more, keeping the knees bent. Maybe that doesn't feel right and you bring them in a little bit, or bring them in even closer together. So play with where the feet are to get a good position for yourself. Now the head is still hanging between the arms. I want you to think of opening up those shoulders away from the ears. So you're dropping the triceps down towards the mat slightly as you lift the belly and take the gaze between the legs. Breathing here. Good. Let's come down to kneeling. Good, because we're coming into it a few times. Good, you can just roll the shoulders. So I'm giving you a lot of options. You might just need to play with all of those different options, figuring out where the hands are, figuring out where the feet are. So let's come back up again. I'm going to give you a couple more instructions, and then I'm going to give you a little challenge while you're in downward facing dog, okay? So let's take the hands to the mat again. Index fingers pointing forward, spreading those fingers, maybe trying a new position with your hands in terms of how far apart they are. Tucking your toes, lifting the tailbone up and back, keeping the weight in legs. I'm going to give you a few different instructions here. So taking the tailbone back, lifting the belly, dropping those triceps so that your shoulders are open. The head is hanging between the arms. Your gaze is between the legs. Now, get the energy to your heels and think about dropping those heels towards the mat. It may mean that you can straighten the legs. It may mean that your knees are still bent, but the energy through the heels are dropping down towards the mat, allowing the belly to continue to lift up. Now, keeping the weight as even as you can, I want you to take your right hand and you're going to take it back to either the thigh, the calf, or even your ankle. And then look under your arm if you can. So you're trying not to lose the weight in the feet. Try to keep it even. And I know it's challenging. Good. Keep breathing. Take that hand back to where it was, and then let's switch sides. Left hand to the thigh or the calf, or maybe even the ankle, and maybe you could turn to look under your arm. Again, the weight is even on the feet. The left arm is straight as you reach towards the leg. Good. Let's take that arm forward, bring the knees down, come into a kneeling position. And again, rolling the shoulders. Good. So are you finding different positions for your feet and your hands? We're going to come into yet another variation of downward facing dog. And again, you want to think about trying to keep the weight as even as possible as we do these variations. Okay? So again, let's bring our hands to the mat. Index fingers pointing forward, spreading the fingers. Even right here, try not to drop into the shoulders, but lift up the upper back. Tuck your toes, lift the tailbone, send it back. Try to drop those heels back as far as you can, even if your knees are bent. Drop the triceps down towards the mat. Lift the belly and look between the legs as your head is hanging between the arms. Now, keeping the weight even this time in your hands, you're going to lift the right foot up behind you. This is three-legged dog. So pressing back through the heel, trying not to lift up the hip, but keeping the hips even. So it's not about how high the leg is. You're pressing back through the heel, keeping the weight even in the hands and opening up those shoulders. Let's take the right foot down and then lift up the left foot. Same thing, weight even in the hands. Lifting up that foot, not too high, trying to keep the hips even, pressing through the heel, toes are pointing down. Your head is still hanging between the arms, good. Take the foot down, let's bring the knees down, and again, roll the shoulders. Nice. Okay, we're gonna do one more variation. So in the one we just did in three-legged dog, our hips are quite even. We're now gonna open the hip a little bit more. Feels quite nice, a little bit of a hip opener. So let's come back to downward dog again. Good. Fingers pointing forward, those index fingers forward, spreading the fingers, tucking the toes, lifting up. And feel free to play here with the width of your feet or your hands. Take the weight back. Keep the head between the arms, dropping the energy through the heels down, even if your knees are bent or slightly bent. Lifting the belly up. Now let's come back to three-legged dog, lifting that right foot up, and this time bring the foot to the glute, lift the knee up towards the ceiling, and turn the torso to the right so you're looking under your right arm. Breathing here. Keep pressing into both hands evenly so you can really feel length through the right side. Breathing here. Good. Let's come back to three-legged dog and then take that foot down. Let's do the same on the other side. Lifting the left foot up. Good. Bring the foot to the glute. Lift the knee and open the hip.
as you look under your arm. So breathing here, feeling the length through the left side and across the hip. Keeping the weight even in the hands. Keep pressing gently into the mat. Good. Come back to three-legged dog. The foot comes down. Come back to kneeling. And roll the shoulders. That's a lot of downward facing dog. So keep trying. Keep playing with the positioning of the hands and the feet, and you might find a difference in the shoulders and in the wrists. The more you can get the weight back into the legs, the less pressure is on those shoulders, right? So keep working at it. We'll see you next time.